In this WrestleTalk news, more details on Vince McMahon's retirement, how Brock Lesnar appeared on SmackDown after walking out, my review of SmackDown, Tempest review of Rampage, and more. Subscribe and enable notifications to always on for daily wrestling news videos.
Support WrestleTalk!
Wrestling news sure never stops, does it? For those who weren't around last night or haven't seen our breaking news videos that went up yesterday, Vince McMahon announced his official retirement from WWE, naming co-CEOs Stephanie McMahon and Nick Khan in his place. Now, there have obviously been a ton of details surrounding this that have emerged, with PW Insider noting that the decision to have Vince retire was made privately about a week or so ago, with the decision to have Stephanie and Nick Khan as co-CEOs made shortly after. There was some confusion over the retirement from fans, as Vince mentioned his roles as chairman and CEO he was stepping down from, but not his role in creative. However, Fightful Select has clarified that yes, Vince is actually retiring from all active roles in WWE, with WWE confirming to them that this is not a storyline. Bruce Pritchard will reportedly be taking over Vince McMahon's television duties going forward, with Pritchard taking some direction from McMahon during this transitional period. According to PW Insider, there was a pretty positive reaction from talent backstage at SmackDown to the news. As well as surprise, because there was a belief that Vince would be around in some form for a long time, talent were excited at the prospect of a new energy for creative. There have been rumors circulating among fans, and as Fightful Select reports, among the talent in WWE as well, that Kevin Dunn will be the next to leave the company. And while none of these rumors have been confirmed, Select points out that the last time the same talent speculated that John Laurinaitis was going to be ousted, that turned out to be true. Of course, we couldn't have this news just be about WWE now, could we? As Tony Khan reacted to the news by saying, "Thanks to you wrestling fans and your great support of AEW, I'm grateful to now be the longest tenured CEO in pro wrestling," which is actually incredibly funny. There's more details on the retirement itself, reactions to it, and loads more, so make sure to check out and stay tuned to WrestleTalk.com for the latest. But of course, this retirement hasn't stopped some other news emerging, as former WWE star Paul London, on an appearance on the Café de Renee with Renee Dupree podcast, noted how the late Ashley Massaro spoke out to him about Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn. "I do remember specifically many times when she would be crying to me because Vince was propositioning her to fly on the jet with them. Kevin Dunn, Bucktooth Bucky, would be telling her that she has to fly on the jet with them. Every now and then, they'd always put the divas up at like the TV hotel or whatever. He'd be knocking on her door and trying to get her to answer." Before her passing, Massaro never publicly accused McMahon or Dunn, though after her death, an affidavit saw her accuse McMahon of covering up members of US military sexually assaulting her while on tour with WWE and urging her to do the same. This is just the latest allegation against Vince McMahon, as he's still under investigation by WWE's board of directors. I think, though the retirement may have stopped that, I guess, for allegedly having an affair with a former employee, sexually coercing another employee, and paying a total of $12 million in hush money. We're going to do a little more news today and a little less SmackDown review. I hope you can understand, considering yesterday was possibly the biggest news day in the history of wrestling. So, more news. So, right after this whole Vince McMahon retirement thing kicked off, there was then some more breaking news as Brock Lesnar had seemingly walked out of WWE. Brian Alvarez initially reported that Brock Lesnar had left the building where SmackDown was being held, following it up by saying that Brock had said something along the lines of, "If he's gone, I'm gone," in reference to him being upset that Vince had retired. Sean Ross Sapp then corroborated this with, "Also just heard this, was told Brock was pissed off." WWE then pulled the advertising for Brock for the episode of SmackDown themselves. And considering that Brock Lesnar is scheduled to face Roman Reigns at SummerSlam in exactly 1 week's time, this is a bit of an oopsie poopsie and might need fixing. Plans were massively altered at that point, firstly for SmackDown and then for SummerSlam. According to Fightful Select, Brock was supposed to be the focal point of the entire SmackDown episode. However, he was written out of it completely. But what about SummerSlam? According to Cultaholic, while this was all kicking off, WWE were looking to make overtures for a Goldberg return who would replace Lesnar at SummerSlam if he didn't return. Plans were said to be in flux, and yeah, you think? Crikey. Brock leaving the building was then corroborated by PW Insider and Fightful Select. However, there were then reports from Alvarez and WrestleVotes that WWE were trying to get Lesnar back as much as they could, which is what ended up happening. I know they are working on getting Brock back to the building to talk this out. We'll see. According to Fightful Select, things blew over and Lesnar returned to the building while SmackDown was on air. The final segment of the show, in which Lesnar appeared, was specifically rewritten to have the option to include Lesnar if they wished, but didn't have to. They of course did, and Lesnar's walkout was even referenced on commentary, saying they thought he'd gone. One source for Fightful Select called the situation overblown, but did admit that there was some legitimate concern that Lesnar might not return for SmackDown. Once Lesnar did return, his mood was reported to be much better. Okay, that's the news. Now we can do my review of SmackDown, let's say in about 3 minutes? Maybe more? I don't know. Stephanie McMahon kicked off the show with a "Thank you Vince" chant, which led right into the Street Profits entering through the crowd before Angelo Dawkins cut a fired-up promo about them winning the tag titles, before they were interrupted by Theory, who was interrupted by the Usos, who were interrupted by Madcap Moss, and they all brawled, setting up the main event of a 6-man tag. This was fine. Shinsuke Nakamura faced Ludwig Kaiser again next, and they've changed Walter's music again. This is once again worse. What's good though is Walter barking orders and commanding Kaiser from the outside. I like that. That's nice. Kaiser and Nakamura had a solid match, and Kaiser managed to get the win thanks to interference from Walter. This wasn't a bad match by any means, but I'd prefer Walter to judge Kaiser's capabilities based on his own merit rather than getting involved. On the stage, Walter chopped Kaiser again despite him winning, because I guess he needed to interfere for him. I'm once again less of a fan of this, and would prefer Kaiser to win or lose on his own merit, and would be praised for winning and chopped for losing. Liv Morgan and Ronda Rousey had a backstage promo where Ronda quickly said, "Hey Kayla, you don't need to be here, so piss off, will ya?" Ronda's promo was characteristically Ronda-like, while Morgan's promo was pretty good, saying that she won't beat Ronda because she's better, but because she loves this more, she needs this more than her. This was solid stuff. Happy Corbin did a sneak attack on Pat McAfee on commentary, which was a fun angle. I just would have preferred it to be a little more impactful, like going through the commentary table or something, because it was just a bonk off the desk and into the barricade, and then they brawled backstage and they were separated, which led to a pretty good Pat McAfee promo. And then we had the Viking Raiders. The new vicious Viking Raiders did nothing new or vicious in this match against Jinder Mahal and Shanky, instead winning by countout when they threw Jinder Mahal into the New Day at ringside. Why couldn't they just, win? It's only Jinder and Shanky. The Brawling Brutes segment was advertised as shillelaghs and shenanigans, which I just truly hate it. In my heart, I can't stand it. And after Drew McIntyre came out, Sheamus made it official that next week on SmackDown, he and Drew will have a good old-fashioned Irish Donnybrook match, whatever the hell that is, where there'll be shillelaghs, and wouldn't you believe it, also shenanigans. I don't know how this match can be described as good old-fashioned when it hasn't happened before, but sure, I am very bored of this feud. Can these two just fight already? Also, why not at SummerSlam? Raquel Rodriguez faced Sonya Deville and won. Raquel has new music as well. It's also bad. Aaliyah was supposed to face Lacey Evans again, and wouldn't you know it, we didn't get the match, because SmackDown is the same show every week, even when the biggest shakeup in wrestling happens. Lacey did the same promo, hit Aaliyah with a women's right, and walked out. They then had the gall to advertise Aaliyah versus Lacey Evans for next week, which is the 4th week in a row. Jeff Jarrett said he was gonna do a good referee at SummerSlam. Alrighty then. Maxine Dupree made her debut in a backstage segment, and the Summerwear line is being shown off next week instead. And then we had the main event of the Usos and Theory versus Madcap Moss and the Street Profits, where Theory walked out of the match, was attacked by the Usos, who were then laid out by the Profits, and then Theory carried on wrestling despite him walking out of the match, and despite him being tagged out, he was a legal man. Details. He and Moss wrestled a bit more, and then because WWE don't know how to finish matches, they did the same finisher again, where Theory hit Moss with the briefcase. The Usos and the Street Profits seemingly vanished at this point, as Lesnar came out and hit Theory with 2 F5s, one onto the briefcase, which was a fun ending angle. Look, I can't be too harsh on WWE here. They were going through a lot and had to rewrite their whole show when Lesnar walked out, and I'm sure that everything they had originally planned would have wowed me and been amazing, but the stuff you can be sure that Lesnar wouldn't have been involved in, like Lacey and Aaliyah and the New Day and the Viking Raider stuff, was still a bit rubbish. In fact, I'd say that those were the worst bits of the show, and the stuff that was hastily rewritten was actually a bit better. So overall, a 3 out of 5? Is that fair? I don't know. It still wasn't very good. Now to Tempest for Rampage.
Boy, this show sure feels insignificant this week. We kicked off Rampage with our opening match in the ring as Hangman Page and John Silver took on the Butcher and the Blade. This was another very solid but pretty standard opening match, but my brain couldn't help but find it odd seeing Hangman on Rampage. I know he's been on the show before, but this is only his third match on Rampage after the Adam Cole match and the Royal Rampage. Just neat, really. This match was very well wrestled, but there really wasn't much to talk about here. The Blade got busted open, which is slightly ironic, and Hangman got the win with the buckshot lariat. Solid stuff, but nothing memorable. 3 out of 5. We then got another promo from Claudio Castagnoli that serves to show how stupid WWE were for so long because this man connects and delivers every time. Claudio said that he would beat Jonathan Gresham at Death Before Dishonor, but he did it better than that because Claudio is a good promo. I know a lot of people are learning that for the first time these days, but hey, come, there's room on this wagon. I can't wait to see this match. 4 out of 5. Lee Moriarty then took on Dante Martin with Matt Sydal at ringside and Stokely Hathaway lurking in the shadows. This was a respectful match for the early goings as Dante hit an awesome twisting half Nelson slam and Stokely came out onto the ring. Seeing Big Stokes lit a fire under Moriarty as he delivered a bunch of really aggressive stomps and then won by rolling up Dante using the ropes. After the match, Matt Sydal told Lee that next week he'll take on the teacher and he isn't ready, as Lee still didn't take Stokely's business card. Ooh, intrigue. It'll be interesting to see how Lee Moriarty does as a heel because he is just so gosh darn likable. Tyga style, baby. 4 out of 5. Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter took on Sky Blue and Ashley, last name I can't pronounce, and while this certainly was more wrestling than we saw from the women on last week's show, I still think there is a lot of room for improvement on Rampage. The match again was quick and solid, with the tandem offense of Baker and Hayter being the best part of the match. Of course, legal tags and such really don't matter in this promotion sometimes, but the action was dynamic, so I'm a bit more forgiving this time. Britt got the win with the lockjaw. 3 out of 5. We got the rap battle between Max Caster and Austin Gunn, and credit will be given to Austin Gunn. He went out there and rapped his little Eminem ass off. Among the best bits in this were Austin saying he isn't afraid of Bobby Lashley's sister and John Cena wanting his gimmick back, while Max actually had rhythm, and I was worried that Austin's lines were going to be hard to top, but then Max said he'd put a shell on him like they were a Blastoise, and he won. Blastoise is the 4th member of the Gun Club. B-Rabbit then started choking, and this ended with a beatdown from the Gun Club. A very entertaining segment this was, I thought. If you don't care for this sort of thing, that's cool, but I had fun. Also, Lil Scrappy ain't no Wale. Shout out to Wale. 4 out of 5. And then we got our main event of Christopher Daniels versus Jay Lethal. This, like the opener, was perfectly acceptable and yet still not very memorable. Also, I don't know why, but when I see these two in the ring together, I think TNA and not ROH. That could just be me though. This match was fine, these guys are total pros, and the crowd was still pretty hot for the match, but there was still not that much to write home about. Lethal won with the lethal injection, and after the match, Satnam Singh gorilla press slammed Daniels on the floor, which looked like it sucked. And we went off the air with Lethal choking out Daniels and Sanjay Dutt saying at Death Before Dishonor, they will break Samoa Joe. I am so ready for Samoa Joe to beat Jay Lethal and move on from this feud forever. 3 out of 5. So overall, this was another average show, with the only real highlights being the rap battle and the Lee Moriarty match, and unfortunately, that's really not enough to get people to go out of their way to see this show. It was totally passable, but Rampage has set lofty standards for itself, and this didn't quite reach them. 3 out of 5.
Okay, so...
We're not at the office, and the biggest wrestling news in the history of social media, in the history of our lifetimes, has just broken. If you have not seen, Vince McMahon has announced his retirement from WWE on Twitter.